Hi everybody, this is problem set 2 for the power rule. And you'll see we have the problem 65 squared equals 5 to an exponent times another number to a second exponent right here, right? Which looks very different than our first problem set. So I'm going to bring that up on the board. 65 equals 5 to some exponent times another number to an exponent. And what I want to do is I want to think about 65 and the way it breaks down, okay? So 65 is the same thing as 5 times 13, right? And we know that because, well, you may know 5 times 12 is 60, and maybe that's as high as you went in elementary school, and then you go, well, 60 plus 5 is 65, so we need one more. And we know from our last lesson that this is the same thing, right? You multiply 5 times 13 first, that gives us 65. 65 squared is what we started with. And from our previous lesson, we also knew that when you have this right here, we can break this down into two parts. We can say 5 squared times 13 squared, because this is what we did in our last lesson, okay? So 5 squared times 13 squared is the same as 65 squared. And so that's what you're going to do. You're going to take the base, and then you're going to break it into two terms multiplied together, and it'll give you one. It'll say, okay, so this is 65 squared equals 5 times something, or it'll say, you know, it could have said 13 here, and we would have had to bring out the 5. And so we're going to split our base and then raise both parts of the base to the same exponent, okay? So you'll notice that in every single one of these problems, in every single one, this exponent right here and this exponent right here will always match this exponent right here. That's because this is how we split up the problem. Now, as we go through, we're gonna put our numbers in. 5 squared times 13 squared. And I'm going to click How Did I Do? That button is so helpful. If you forget how to do it, if you feel like one's too confusing, you can say, how did I do? And they'll say, boop, boop. Okay, it's incredibly important to know that numbers can be broken down. 65 times 65 is the same thing as 65 squared. 5 times 13 times 5 times 13. We can group them and we can put them back together, right? And that's not exactly how we did it. We built off the previous lesson. This gives us another very easy way of looking at it. So, and then it shows you what happens when we have more than 2. So, so as you go through, what we're going to do is we're going to split our base 65 into 5 times 13, and then we're going to raise both of those to the original exponents, which are squared, to get us back to 65 squared. As you go through and do this problem set, click How Did I Do? Take a look every single time the first time you go through. It is a tough lesson set. It's a weird idea to wrap your head around. The other thing that I would suggest doing, get out a calculator. That's okay. Let's get out a calculator. Right? And let's say, okay, so 13 squared times 5 squared gives us 4,225. And that should give us the same thing as 65 squared. And it does, right? It's okay to test it. Test it every single time if you don't believe it. Please test it. If you don't believe something, look for evidence. So, you know, feel free to bring out your calculator and look at it as you practice to confirm that this works for you, or to try different things out. When you get to the test, don't use the calculator. Just use your skill sets. So if you have questions about this, you know, you can email, iMessage, phone call. Feel free to jump in Open Jigsaw. But what we're going to do is split the base, raise it to the original exponent.